of the points you make are bizarre beyond belief. Let's start with Harry Abramson. You completely misrepresented what he said. He did not say that the Jews go back to Onkelos, a convert, and the source from Jewish Virtual Library didn't say that either. He said things can be traced back to Colonibus in Italy. And then if you look to Harry Abramson, his most recent videos, you know that he says that the most recent major studies just from the end of last year, so absolutely up to date, have been released. All right. And this is by a large team of geneticists. They have said, yes, we can trace these people back to Italy in the 1st century, and then we can trace them genetically back to ancient Middle Eastern people. What you said about Onkelos is a name similar to Colonimus. That's all it is. It's not saying it's the same descent. All it's saying, where do we find the name Colonimus earlier? There's a similar name to it in the Talmud, but others have different names for it. He's not tracing it back. You completely misrepresented what he said. Folks, check the sources. And you want to see if Harry Abramson agrees with all this or absolutely not. And by the way, when I said Hebrew Israelites, I'm talking about the One West, those in the 90s identified actually as Black Hebrew Israelites. Just for clarity, I'm not speaking of all Hebrew Israelites, because I know many of you have the sense to completely reject the bogus chart. I didn't mention the Igbos specifically, but remember, if what you're saying is true, if what Alizar is saying is true, then the chart cannot possibly refer to legitimate children of Israel, because God said you'll be left scant, few in number. All right, not 400, 500, 600 million, whatever the total number would be. That alone disqualifies it. Absolutely 100%. Let's hear a specific response to that. Also, oral traditions were mentioned, right? Like the Lemba people. They're in South Africa now, Bantu-speaking background Lemba people. They had a tradition that they came from ancient Israel, and the Buba clan, particularly among them, that they were of priestly descent. And here's what DNA found. DNA found that a large percentage of their men, because it is paternal, is through the father that priestly descent is made, that a large percentage of the men had this Y chromosome that was unique. And they also did a survey of Jews who, through tradition of the centuries, have said, yes, last name of Cohen, things like that. They traced themselves back to the ancient priestly tribe and priestly family of Aaron. And when you actually go through it, what do you discover? That over 50% of Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardi Jews who identified as Kohanim have the same priestly gene as do the Lemba people. How does that happen? Because genetics can tell you certain things very, very clearly and can point to common origins in the Middle East. Again, you want a list of geneticists. This is the list I was looking for. This is on the most recent study, some of the premier geneticists in the world. I can put it up for you. It's too much just to grab in 1 second and take me all day to read it. Some of the most prestigious folks in the world have said, yes, we can trace Jews back very accurately now, Ashkenazi Jews very accurately, to an ancient Middle Eastern heritage. Here's the other thing DNA can tell you, that the Ashkenazi Jews have things in common with other Middle Eastern Jews as opposed to with other Europeans on a higher level. Genetics can tell you that. So what genetics can tell you is very important. As for linguistics, the Hebrew language has been passed on through the centuries. The Mexicans have not been using it. The Haitians have not been using it. The Native Americans have not been using it. That's not who's been using it. The people who have been using it know how it's pronounced, know how it's been passed on. You have a completely butchered, manufactured version of Hebrew that is being used at LQ, right? Completely bogus. You can't even, how can you trust the people who can't even pronounce the language or come near a proper pronunciation of it, can't even recognize a mater lectionis, a mother of reading, a vowel letter, and make it into a consonant? How can you trust them to have other authentic truths? The fact is, there is nothing to connect the peoples of these specific tribes, zero, except some bizarre taking a verse out of context to connect them to anybody on the 12 tribes chart. Let me go back to the PowerPoint if I can. Can we put that back up, sir? Just give me a second while, Brother Berean, can you get my PowerPoint back up?
Are we able to put the PowerPoint back up? Are we able to put the PowerPoint back up? Okay.
Well, tell you what. Give me just a couple extra seconds because we didn't get that. I'll just go back
I'll pause for 10 seconds. Their time.
All right, we're good. I'll just read these things. I'll just read these things myself then. So Dr. Paul Wexler and some other Tel Aviv University professors were mentioned. Their views have been thoroughly discredited by a wide range of scholars. And that is commonly known. So the idea that Ashkenazi Jews are actually converts of the Khazars, which is another theory that comes up. At most, a small amount of them may have converted Khazars, and then they've been lost through history. 2 centuries later, the Spanish Jewish rabbi Chasta Ibn Shafrut sent emissaries to inquire if the story was true. That's how little lasting evidence there was of this alleged massive Khazar conversion, let alone the Khazar Jews allegedly being the originators of Ashkenazi Jewry. And it should also be pointed out that the Khazar kingdom appears to have been destroyed by 1000 AD with no mention of Jews in that region after that for 400 years. And then linguistically, there is absolutely no linguistic connection between the Khazarian people who spoke a Turkic language, which is what Dr. Paul Wexler was trying to argue, and Ashkenazi Jews whose first language, Yiddish, is very close to German. The Yiddish linguist and onomastic expert, Dr. Alexander Bieder, has stated the corpus of personal names and surnames borne by Jews in Eastern Europe during the last 6 centuries, as well as the Yiddish language as a whole, do not contain any link to Khazaria. Check the scholarly literature on it. Dr. Bieder has followed, not Dr. Wexler. And as for linguistic refutation, in the Jewish communities of Eastern Europe over the past 6 centuries, not a single Turkic name can be found in documents listing Jewish names. Even in documents from the 15th and 16th centuries dealing with Jews who lived in the territories of modern Ukraine and Belarus, no such names. And there is no connection genetically between Ashkenazi Jewish DNA, and Turkic, Khazarian DNA. So when you dig a little deeper, you hear these bombastic claims being made. Yeah, let's put the PowerPoint down. I'm not actually using that, so thank you. You can remove that.
PowerPoint down, please.
Yeah. I didn't even know it was up. I was just reading from those other slides. So sorry if there was anything confusing there. But in point of fact, this is really simple. You look at the people of Haiti who are allegedly Levi. They don't observe the seventh-day Sabbath. They don't circumcise their sons on the 8th day. They don't teach Torah to Israel. Well, according to the word of God, that is their role. All right. So they are disqualified. When you go through tribe after tribe, if you go around the people of Central America, there's no long-standing oral tradition that they all come from the 12 tribes of Israel. And they are not Middle Eastern. The fact their color's a little darker, they're not Middle Eastern. There's no equivalency there. You know what it's like? Some of the proofs that Al-Azhar is raising, it's like saying, well, my last name's Brown, so that proves I'm brown. I must be brown skinned. Or I wear a hood, so I must be from the hood. I mean, it's this kinds of ridiculous arguments that are being made. And as for people robbed and plundered, isn't it interesting that how quickly we forget that 2 out of 3 European Jews were slaughtered in the Holocaust, that 3 million out of 3 million Polish Jews were slaughtered in the Holocaust. My people, Ashkenazi, that we have been kicked out of country after country after country. Why are we back in the land? Because God in his mercy promised it, not because of us, but because of his mercy in Ezekiel, the 36th chapter, not because of our works, but because of his mercy. And hate crimes. Are you aware that religious hate crimes in America, the #1 targeted group is Jewish people? And you know what causes a lot of it? The kind of rhetoric that we hear in some of these radical Hebrew Israelite sectors.
A minute 30.
Traced back directly to these very things on social media and beyond. Let me also say, as for Ezekiel, it's very simple. He was to lay on his side 1 day each for the sins and iniquity of Israel, 390 years for Israel. So this is Israel's sin. He lays on his side for 390 days because of Israel's sin in the past, and Judah's sin 40 days. So the 40 years of their sin. Read it in Ezekiel 4. It's not a prophecy about the suffering of African Americans in the United States. It's not related to that anymore. And if you want to find the people on the earth right now, the most robbed, the most plundered, the most attacked, that would be Christians in countries like Nigeria, where they're persecuted by the Muslim majority, or Christians in countries like North Korea, where they're slaughtered. You can't just say, well, because this fits, then we throw out the rest of history, we throw out the rest of tradition, we throw out DNA, we throw out genetics, we throw out all of that because a verse seems to apply to somebody somewhere. You can't do that. There's nothing scholastic, academic, truthful, accurate about it whatsoever. I would like to see some actual proof, not all the speculation, but some actual proof. That would be delightful. Thank you.
All right.